Welcome to Equilter Quilt Tips. I'm Dana, and I manage customer service here at Equilter. And I'm going to be presenting today a segment we call Pressing Seams for Perfect Squares. I'm very excited about the quilt we're introducing this week as our featured free pattern design. It has a handsome design component of checkerboard at each corner, and we want those squares to come out perfectly. I don't exactly believe in the quilt police, and I don't think they're here today, but often we do find that when our squares don't match, we focus on that as the quilt progresses. So hopefully we've got some tips for you today that will keep that from happening. Okay, so I've stitched my rows of squares together following the directions that come in the download pattern directions from the Equilter website. The instructions for this quilt have us press seam allowances away from the orchid fabric, the lighter fabric, unless otherwise directed. I like that because pressing the seams toward the dark side will help conceal the seam allowances on the right side of the quilt top, and that's always nice. We can't always do that, but that's a general principle I do like to follow when I can. Many quilters today, be they the modern quilters or the others, like to press their seam allowances open. That helps reduce bulk, and that's perfectly fine. But in a case where we're trying to match points or match seams so that they come together perfectly, that can present a little bit of an extra challenge. In this case, by pressing them in a single direction, we actually create a little fold that has dimension and feel. And then when it's time to stitch these together, in positioning them, we can actually feel that those folds are abutted right up against each other. And that way I know those seams are in the right place and it's all going to be okay. I can take it one seam at a time as I'm stitching and know that it's going to work out just fine. So let's go do some sewing and see how it works. Now it's time we're sewing these rows together. As I go along, I am feeling the seam as I approach the edge of a square. I'm feeling those little folds you remember we talked about. If I feel a gap, then I know my folds are too far apart and I'm going to have a gap between blocks. If I have an overlap, it's like a thank you ma'am bump. And then I know I'm going to have a different overlap of the block, neither of which I want. I want to avoid both of those. So I'm feeling this and making sure that the actual sense of the seam of the fold disappears. And I've been controlling that with each block. I'm becoming the pin. And I am holding that fabric together where it needs to be, with those folds up against each other. One seam to the next. And then, voila, that square matches perfect. Okay, so we're ready to press our checkerboard corner. We started with the idea of always pressing toward the dark side. That's not always possible. The instructions for this quilt then say to press all these seams in a single direction, and that will be perfectly fine for this particular situation. As we press, we want to make sure that we're not pulling too much on that diagonal seam. So I tend to work with the grain to keep the grain straight and not stretch out that diagonal any more than I need to. I press it from the wrong side, making sure all seam allowances are staying the direction they were. And take a look on the right side to make sure you see how much stretch we're getting in that bias. Okay, so we've got our checkerboard corner finished, all squares together, corners matching very nicely, and the technique that we've shown you here today hopefully is one that you can enjoy using in other applications as well. It's a great way to get good matches and make the process enjoyable. So we thank you for watching Pressing Seams for Perfect Squares, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.